Well, yesterday, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka starred the political pot, so to speak. Kalonzo shared a document indicating a pact with ODM party leader Raila Odinga signed on the 30th of April 2017. Now, part of the secret elections pact allegedly bound the former Prime Minister to back Kalonzo for the top job in August this year. Well, to canvass around this development further is Makueni Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana joining me in studio. Welcome so much, Governor, for this conversation. And it is important to point out that the agreement, as seen in this particular document that I have, was signed between the two principals who were part of the National Super Alliance then, and witnessed by both Professor Makau Mutua and yourself, Professor Kivutha Kibwana. So first of all, can you attest to the fact that there was a binding legal agreement between the two political leaders in 2017?
Thank you very much for having me. I can state categorically that there is a document that is in the possession of Makau Mutua, who was professor, who was supposed to make it public, which contained an agreement between Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. Kalonzo has brought out a document which I have seen, but the authentic document was kept through agreement of the two parties by Professor Makau Mutua. But it is a fact that the two principals then did sign a document. And it was signed in the context of NASA, if I can remember. Indeed, it was even headed NASA deal.
All right, and I have the document here, in fact.
Yeah.
So you're saying, and I've showed you this document a bit earlier on, you would authenticate and say this is the actual document that was signed?
I think it's important to get the copy that was kept by Professor Makau Mutua, because that was the agreement of the parties. But what I did, after the two principals were able to make an agreement, I was a witness on behalf of Kalonzo Musyoka. Professor Makau was a guarantor on behalf of Raila Odinga. And I did not keep a copy. My copy, I gave it to Kalonzo Musyoka. He asked for it for his safekeeping. So the three of them did have a copy. And as I've stated earlier, Professor Makau was the one who was to keep the authentic copy in case there was any dispute.
Right. So with this agreement, and you actually acknowledge the fact that there was an agreement made between Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka.
Yes.
And remember yesterday Kalonzo Musyoka said that Raila Odinga had breached the terms of the agreement by going forward to, a vie for the presidency, with the fact that, and I'll state here, part of the articles of the agreement was that Principal H, which is Raila Odinga, in a public MOU will be able to serve one term and publicly endorse Principal Q, who is Kalonzo Musyoka, as a presidential candidate for 2022.
Of course, the agreement that they made was an agreement made in the context of NASA. And indeed, even language, if I can remember well, in that agreement, did say that whatever they agreed on was to be done within the context of NASA. And of course, it was anticipated that NASA would continue until 2022. And there was even then thinking that it would become a political party. All the political parties in that coalition would collapse themselves into one party. But the moment there was no NASA, then the NASA deal could not have gone on. And indeed, actually, it was not Raila who breached the NASA coalition. It was the other three principals who did so. So for Kalonzo to say that there is an agreement now under NASA, that can't be so, because it was very clear that they signed an agreement. It was a NASA deal. It was anticipated that NASA was going to continue until 2022. And indeed, when you look at what they agreed on in terms of Raila would serve 1 term.
Right.
And after he serves 1 term, he would support Kalonzo. Of course, he didn't serve because they didn't win. He didn't serve, you know, any 1 term under NASA, so that he could therefore support not only Kalonzo, because unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, there was a prior agreement between the 4 of them.
Principles of NASA.
Yeah, the 4 principles of NASA.
Right.
The mother agreement, where it was said Raila would serve for 1 term, and any of the other 3 would be eligible for presidential candidature. But what happened was...
so then how did Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka end up signing another different deal between just the 2 of them?
What Kalonzo told Raila was for him to accept to deputize him, it was necessary for a separate agreement within the context of NASA to be signed so that he could accept to deputize him, because there was a struggle between Musalia and Kalonzo.
Were the other principals aware of this secret agreement?
That I would not know. I would not be in the know about that. I think they would be able to say whether they were or not. But that is the context, because Kalonzo said for him to accept to deputize Raila, it was necessary for this second agreement, but still within the context of NASA.
All right. But you're saying that the dissolution of NASA has sort of rendered that particular pact obsolete. But then again, you have Mr. Kalonzo saying this particular pact was outside the National Super Alliance Coalition Agreement and bound Raila Odinga whether he won or lost in the 2017 election.
But if I remember, something that was titled NASA deal could not be outside NASA. So that the one thing that Kalonzo could have done was, first of all, not to agree to anything under NASA, so that it gets out of the NASA matrix, which he didn't.
Right.
And also in terms of the issue of also involving the others. Again, if he had involved the others, so that they would have said that whether there is NASA or not, Raila binds himself to support either Kalonzo or any of the others, then of course he would be on firm ground. But the problem is still they thought that NASA would continue for a long time, and as a consequence, the agreement that there was under NASA. And the moment NASA, you know, was collapsed, then it was not possible. And of course, there is also the problem of now there is Azimio, or there is another sequel coalition.
Right.
There are other parties who have come into this coalition. So to say that they should be excluded because there was a prior agreement in NASA, which NASA is dead, then that wouldn't make political sense.
All right.
So I think...
So was it safe to say that with Kalonzo Musyoka using this particular deal to have negotiations with Raila Odinga on the Azimio la Umoja platform, is it rendered obsolete as well, with the fact that now legally he cannot use this document by saying Odinga breached the terms of agreement?
He cannot use this, he cannot use what they agreed on in terms of NASA, because there is no NASA. Raila was not responsible for breaking NASA. He actually wished that NASA would have become one, you know, political party, hopefully even Azimio. So what Kalonzo is using is something that is not, it's non-existent.
Okay.
And again,
all right.
I think it's important to ask, even to ask himself, to what extent, even if he was endorsed by all of them, they agreed, even if they endorsed him, to what extent has he popularized himself enough so that he's a safe bet?
All right.
Because politics are so pragmatic, and you cannot be endorsed by people if the polls are showing that you're trailing all the time.